Alright, so we are actually getting behind a little bit on Discord discussions. Discord discussions! Not sure if that should have a theme song. No,
No.
let's forget that. But anyway, on Discord discussions, we discuss things that we saw on Discord. Pretty much.
Wow.
There's no more self-explanatory segment on the show than that.
Except for Weekly Muse.
That is also pretty... Actually, most of them are, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
One More Thing is just another thing. Anyways. In similar fashion to Helicity's discussion about who is building the game world, which we've had a lot of discussion about too since we talked about it on the show, we had another one from Datum that I wanted to discuss, which was about pros and cons of GMing styles. And what Datum wrote not too long ago, actually, was to discuss the pros and cons of high prep GMing, which is like the mapping, the props, the world details, all of the other periphery, etc., versus lower prep GMing, which is more like improv, theater of the mind, etc. When should you prep, and where do you focus your prep time? Well, that's a pretty good discussion to be having right about now. When it comes to the world-building aspect, now we're not talking so much about Helicity's thing with who's actually controlling the world-building, but when you're doing the GMing, I'll pass the question on to you. When you're doing the GMing, do you consider yourself like a high prep kind of GM, or do you prefer to do more of a less prep up front and then try to work it out as you go?
Oh, I'm definitely low prep.
Okay.
I have vague ideas of things I would like to happen generally.
Okay.
And I might set up a few things ahead of time, but like I don't go out and map the whole thing out. I kind of do theater of the mind. I don't use maps typically when I played over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do miniatures, maps, that type of stuff.
Okay.
But I'm much more of a on-the-fly improv thing when I GM. I feel like it can flow a bit better, and it's kind of just like less stress for, say, me.
Got it. Yeah.
Because, I don't want to sit there and go, well, you guys just took all of these plans I had, threw them out the window, and then stomped on them vigorously. Fuck you.
Yeah, yeah, you don't want to get into that pattern. That was more my experience, too, because I would say that I was, not really knowing what I wanted to do.
You prepped the shit out of Rift Hunters, didn't you?
Rift Hunters was more prep than it really had to be. In fact, when I originally had proposed it to the folks at Open Legend, I basically, was running them through what episode 1 was gonna be. I pretty much, I had full speeches for the different NPCs that were going to be doing speeches. I had written it out, the individual pieces of it, and I was like, yes, and they're going to go here, and there's going to be people, and now I can tell you what all the characters are that are going to be in this location. I had mapped out the entire town of Reveille, where they start in this whole thing. I knew what the different buildings were, and, the side streets and stuff, so the middle of the map, and then I kind of had a little bit of an idea of the exterior. What was going on in the world, the lore, that, the cosmology of this world that they believe in, that whole thing. The stories that were going to be told at the beginning, how they were going to get to their first mission. I had started working on designing the towers at the next mission, at pretty much the second that we start, from that point forward. I will tell you, I would not do that again. I will not do that again.
So what happened during that first session, Nathan?
Not what I wanted.
Anything you wanted happen?
Some of it. In fact, it actually became episode 1 and 2, whoever actually listens to that. It became 1 and 2, because we started to realize when we were brainstorming that, it was Brian and Ryan were kind of like going, yeah, maybe the whole thing where you're doing the speeches of the characters and stuff, we'll wait till episode 2. We'll start there. like by the time you get to that point. And that's probably a good thing, because there was a segment of that, there was a segment of that whole first part where they're in the town in those first couple episodes, where you're just listening to me have a conversation between 3 NPCs that requires no input from the actual characters. It was terrific. It was terrific. Yeah. Because
just Nathan talking to himself in third person.
Yeah, because you had the Reverend. No, actually, there's 5. I think there were 5 characters. They got to the bookstore and they had Blaze, and his grandmother, and there was the pastor, and then there were the 2 precocious orphans. And they're doing a storytelling in the thing. So everyone's kind of like talking back and forth, and I had already scripted out what that back and forth conversation was going to be.
You know, Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I hope you've learned from this is that you don't really need full speeches as long as you kind of make a note about the relevant points of whatever you hear people talking about. In a lot of cases, you can get away with that.
No, I didn't learn that lesson.
You can kind of be like, yeah, you overhear a conversation between these people about this subject, and then this one point that's important comes up. You can give them that. And if you want, it saves you having to do a speech between 5 NPCs that are just all you voicing.
But I needed
dialogue.
But I needed to tell them the entire rich lore of the world that they were now in.
Yeah, you just wanted to lore dump on them.
I did a lore dump as a many moons ago kind of.
You know who doesn't listen to lore dumps?
Who?
Anybody.
I just kind of love the idea that I have like my 4 players that are probably just sitting at home thinking, when do we play the game? while I have like a 15-minute conversation with myself of the characters.
I feel like there needs to be
the build up,
a mechanic in an RPG, tabletop RPG, that is essentially just roll to skip cutscene.
Roll to meta out of this moment. Can we just
yeah, just roll to skip.
Yeah, exactly.
And just new quest. Here's your card.
New quest, yeah. Can we hold the magic button to skip the cutscene? That would be great. Can we close up the book? I didn't really want to read everything. Can we skip to the end and then just get the quest marker? That would be good. No, I mean, that was kind of what I had built, and so I did kind of think to myself, well, once I get out into that, once they leave the bookstore, they have time and before we go to the quest, so, hey, does anyone want to go anywhere? And so, they have free reign to go wherever they want, but the thing is that I'm so happy, because it's like, I know what's going on everywhere, and I've even figured out, like, starting quests and like, plot points in different areas, and where they're gonna go, and how we're gonna get them to their plot threads, and all they have to do is they have to go here, and here, and here. The problem, of course, was they didn't go there.
Yeah, that's always the problem, Nathan.
I wanted them to go to the hotel, because there was going to be a room waiting for them, and that was supposed to set up a quest line, or a little bit of a mystery for one of the characters that would speak to a much larger storyline that I had already figured out.
Another 15-minute cutscene.
Luckily that wasn't a 15-minute cutscene, but I figured that it was going to be an interesting mystery to, something that was gonna involve, dimensions and time travel and a whole bunch of other things, related to why he was still there. And, like, I was like, okay, good, I'll set it up now, because over the next, like, 3 years that we do this, I am gonna make sure that, like, people will be able to go back to this moment at, like, the very first episode, and say, oh yeah, I did plan this out. Haha, yeah, I got him. Like, I was like, I'm gonna plan all of these out so that I got great story threads going for, like, all 4 of the characters, and that way, like, when they watch back, like, to the very end, it'd be like, callbacks! The whole thing worked out perfectly from the beginning. Yep. This was
That worked out for you?
Well, we only did 6 episodes, and I kind of had to end it prematurely. So
no.
Which was fun, because at the end I got to do entire lore dumps about what happened to the rest of the world without most of the cast there at all.
So, Nathan, would you say that if you were to DM again, if you were to GM again,
yeah,
would you be high prep or low prep?
I'm no prepping it. I'm literally coming in with a, like, cool, what do you guys want to do? I'm sitting there like, I don't know, what do you want to do? I think I would probably try a method of just doing, like, story cards or something like that. You know, just pick some out and just kind of go, yeah, that combination works. Let's just use that as a starting point. We'll just work from there.
You gotta lead with the hook.
You gotta lead with the hook. Yeah.
You gotta lead with the hook. You go, this is a thing.
Mm.
And your party is interested in it.
Yeah. See, I think the thing that was working against me, just from what I was used to seeing, because, like, one of the reference points that I had gotten for the, for the live play was Adventure Zone. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So, you're listening to Adventure Zone, and you're listening to what the McElroys had kind of set up with all that. Well, mostly what Griffin set up with that, which is very rich and detailed and very innovative in how it was built. And I'm listening to how that whole thing goes, and thinking to myself, oh, okay, so what I'm really looking for is I want to have a pretty clear, not a totally clear, but I want a pretty clear idea of what the end of this is. Like, where we actually get to at the end. And know I'm working towards that.
I feel like that's not always a good idea for an RPG to set, like, your goal for this end goal.
Sure.
From the beginning, because depending what the party does,
mm-hmm.
you're either never going to reach that,
yeah,
or you could reach that very prematurely, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, we're just going to beeline it.
Right.
Maybe they're going to just beeline it, and then, like, do you just let them?
Yeah.
Do you try to subvert them from it, even though that is the goal?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like having a good starting point and an idea for where you'd like to end up, but not like a concrete plan, works well.
Right. I think what I was trying to figure out was, in a world where you've created, like, this genre mashup, where there were so many different kinds of things that were happening and they were going on different voyages, that I wanted to have some kind of through line that would explain some of it, that would go forward. So I kind of worked out, before we really even started, what the overarching reason for this and this right now was, or at least to create an organization that was essentially the bad guys you'd have to rectify by the end.
Yeah.
In that storyline. And I had a villain, and he had a compelling story. He wasn't gonna I didn't want villains, like, that's the other thing. I didn't want to have villains that were just, like, mustache twirling, I'm just doing a bad thing because I like bad thing. I wanted someone who was, like, motivated to do what he was doing, kind of dispassionately, because of ambition, because of possibility, and what he saw for himself, and just not looking at what the consequences of those actions were, and the organization being like that too, just kind of as like it was supposed to be more like a large corporation that was seeing the energy that could be harnessed from the rifts, and seeing that as a wonderful resource that they could harvest, but they would have to make the rifts continuously larger. They could actually expand them. but without
Nothing can go wrong.
yeah, exactly. Without caring about the fact that the rifts are tearing apart time and space, because it's a lucrative venture. That that might have had some themes outside.
See, in the last one I had,
Mm,
it was similar because there were rifts and tears in reality as well.
mm.
But that wasn't them trying to do it on purpose. It was a scientist going a bit too far with an experiment.
Yeah, that also
Oops,
helps.
I
Yeah.
screwed up. My bad. Accidentally tore the elemental planes asunder, and now they're wreaking havoc
Sure.
on the material plane, and all the planes are collapsing upon it.
Mm-hmm.
Little different, and so that's why we talked about it in the world building one, where the time travel shenanigans that I had, the party had been sent to the past from
Sure.
this future where the planes have collapsed.
Right.
And there was very little of the material plane kind of left. They're like,
Mm.
yeah, we kind of isolated the where this kind of happened from, and we kind of would like you guys to go back to fix it. And the reason we're picking you people to go back and fix it is because you have ancestors who were there at the time.
Mm.
Like, I didn't tell the players this, but it was planned out that these characters were direct descendants from people that were there during the time that it happened,
Sure.
so they could had a more direct like time link or whatever
Oh,
to
okay.
that time period.
Uh-huh.
And then they had to go back and try and fix this.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
They just ended up they were sent back in time by the person who caused the issue, the scientist who originally caused the problem,
Oh, okay.
who had just been living for that long. And he was like, he didn't tell them that it was his fault. But he's like, yeah, no, I've been researching this for a while, and I figured out kind of when this happened and why it happened. So I need you guys to go back and try and fix this. And like tell the guy who's experimenting, not like convince him to not do the thing.
Right. Okay.
I didn't tell them how to convince him not to do the thing he's doing.
Right.
But you know, they could kill him. He's not a villain.
Right.
He's just a scientist.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I can see the science aspect going out of control. That's always fun. How much did you really think of that, though, beforehand? Or how much were you dealing with, like, as you went along? Like, was that something you kind of figured out at the very beginning before you
I
started?
kind of figured
or-
out the plot I wanted to go with, and like,
Okay.
all right, here's kind of your quest, and this is what's gonna happen. And I kind of let the party decide how they were gonna deal with things and where in the world they wanted to go when they got there.
Okay.
And like, they had to figure out how to get there too. So like, they were sent on a boat to an island that existed outside of time,
Okay.
and then they got to the island, and they had to kind of puzzle solve to get the item they needed to do. Had an interaction, did some time travel shenanigans.
Always.
Um,
Yeah. Was there...
went back in time to the place they had originally come from, but in the past,
I see. Did
several
you,
hundred years.
did you have to do a lot of railroading for that?
Not as much as you would expect.
Okay.
Because my party was buying into it,
Okay.
so they're like, okay, this is our quest, we'll do it. All right, I get it. We'll go on. They weren't like, yeah, we want to kind of go do other things. It's like, no, you kind of lead in.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, all right, this is kind of what's going on. You guys have been called here for this reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, cool. We got this. We're in.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, my experience was I railroaded my party pretty bad. That whole thing with the yeah, so here's the thing. There was a point where they wanted to just move on to the next part of the game, and I couldn't figure out, like, I had tried a few different things to, like, get them to the hotel so I could start that story thread. It's like, oh, well, your character is drunk and she should probably sleep that off, so I guess you could take them to the hotel and there's a room waiting for you. But, she was like, no, I'm fine, we can keep going. Okay. Eventually, I'm just kind of like going, before we go, can we go to the hotel? And they were like, oh, okay. Let's do that. Let's just go there. And then, of course, when we get to, like, the later episodes where I'm trying to close people's stories out, I'm pretty much just taking them on a roller coaster to get to get point A to point B. Okay, yeah, and then you get a bunch of raptors come down. Okay, great. Can you fight off the raptors? Okay, this character comes in. They take you to this place. You go there. Now they're gonna take you here. Now you're gonna go on, and yay, your quest is over. Congratulations, you did it. You led my instructions perfectly. Now, of course, considering that they knew that they had to wrap this stuff up, and they had to wrap their character arcs up, in, like, very limited time, they seem to be pretty happy, or relatively happy with just how, because it gave them some closure, at least for Sarah's character, because I had a story arc just for her, well, a session just with her on that, but, for the rest of them, I was just trying to get them to a point real quick, because I had no time. So, it was mostly a time constraint of, now I have to try to cram, like, some semblance of the next, 3 years worth of content I was trying to build into about 2 episodes. Good luck.
Yeah. I know the point of them having you do the thing was to show that Open Legend is accessible for newbies too.
Yes.
Which is great and all. But you know.
Yeah. That didn't seem to work quite right. Then I did the holiday special. And yeah, I prepped that way too much as well, because it was literally to one encounter to the next so that they could get enough crystals to get to the end. Like, it was Candyland, but it was, like, deadlier. And they had to go from one encounter to the next encounter, and I had figured out voices and storylines for every single one of them. And there were also, because I wanted it to be like a holiday special that they were, like, in, like a Rankin Bass special that they were in, I also made fake commercials and cut away to do commercial breaks, and then did fully scripted commercials, fake commercials, in between all the different segments to lead them from point A to point B.
Sounds to me like you'd do better as a producer of a show than running the game.
Yeah, doesn't it? Seems like that was the takeaway that everybody took from this.
So like, I haven't DM'd in probably at least 5 years now. I haven't run a game.
Yeah.
But like, I never prepped that much. It was all headcanon and kind of like, all right, here's an idea of what I'd like to go and happen.
Sure.
But I wouldn't do all that prep like that. It's like, I have loose storylines and things, and I can really morph this. And like, low prep, or at least knowing kind of where things you want to happen should happen, I think works well. And even if you do have all the ideas you have, and you really want to prep the shit out of it, a lot of cases your party, unless they have complete buy-in, are not going to follow that.
No, and I don't think that they did. And the problem is that, like, I kind of I don't know if I was just not quite aware of the structure of it from the perspective of the person running, but I kind of, I don't know. I kind of worked on the premise that I better have something prepared, because I didn't want to end up lost the second that I didn't have something prepared. I think that's the problem with, like, the idea of a low prep, or at least the problem that I would run into, is what happens the second you don't have a thing ready. Like, how am I supposed to get around that?
That's where the improv comes in.
Yeah. That scares me a lot. And the thing is that what inevitably happened is the second I could see an improvisational moment, I then tried to script all of that out. Because there was a thing, I think I probably talked about it once a while back on Delph, but we had one of the characters was a Russian spy, and
course.
but a Russian spy that kept saying that she was not a spy. She was just a famous Russian film actress that was not a spy, and she did that by constantly saying she was not a spy.
That seems like a real life thing that happened. Anyways,
it does feel like that. But anyway, there's a point at the very beginning of the show where she goes to one bar, everybody else is at another one, and so she's now drinking alone. She decides to get a drink. She's drinking alone. She's feeling those effects. And the bartender has now heard her say that she's not a spy several times and asks her, like, hey, are you a spy? and she's like, no, I'm not spy. And I sat there and I thought, yeah, you're gonna have to make some kind of like persuasion check or deception check to see if that works. She failed that. And so the bartender keeps asking her about it.
oh jeez.
And so instead of fessing up and saying, yes, you are a spy, she's like, and then my character just passes out at the bar. Now, the whole thing was that the other characters are able to get her eventually, and get her out of that situation. After that session, though, I think to myself, wait a minute. Whoa. So there was a moment in this entire story where one of my characters, who's trying to convince people that they are not a spy, was unconscious, alone without the other characters around, in a bar, and she would have had her bag with all of her stuff right there. So there's a real possibility, a perfectly reasonable possibility, that if somebody was overhearing this in the bar, that might be on the lookout for spies, they could have gotten something from her bag without any of the party noticing.
You just had the bartender do it.
You could have even had the bartender do it. And I kind of feel like maybe that was going to be the solution, that the bartender did it. But to lead it on to a whole quest. Yeah.
I feel like the players should not be like, yeah, my character passes out.
Yeah, but I was like, okay, if you're going to go with that, though, I'm going to figure out a way to use that. Because my end goal, though, was that there would be a point where she goes, I'm going to go into my bag and I'm going to get something. And what she wanted to get isn't there anymore because somebody had taken it when they were at the bar. And that would indicate that when she gets back to town, she needs to find out who took it, which gets you onto a whole wonderful Cloak and Dagger story that I was going to work on. So, by the time that one thing unexpectedly happened, I had already, started thinking about an entire storyline that was going to go into, a spy ring in the middle of the main city that was going to be for the character. And I overthought that way too much.
Yes.
Yeah. But it would have been awesome.
So, the TLDR here, Nathan.
Yes.
High prep, low prep.
Well, considering I tried high prep and it didn't work, I guess we would go with low prep, by nature. But I think what I'm gonna need, and maybe you have suggestions on this, is some kind of, medium in order to do the low prep. Like either story cards or something that I can feel more comfortable with not doing the prep work.
Vague notes.
Vague notes. Okay.
Vague notes, and if you want, I think Datum and a couple others have mentioned in the Discord as well, that sometimes you just kind of use a pre-established world and just kind of rip it apart.
Sure.
Like, you don't have to go with the established lore, but the locations and the world and the geography make it a lot easier for you to go, yeah, okay, you're in Icewind Dale.
Yeah. And
okay, here's some, you're just here, but I'm not going to go with any of the established lore for it, except for the location. And, everything else is made by me.
Yeah.
Just kind of made up on the spot.
Yep. Fair enough.
I've done that, I did that years ago in the Forgotten Realms with a dragon, I think that was up on a volcano, an ice dragon. I'd taken residence up on the volcano. Of course. Iced over an entire forge of elementals.
Great.
Just taken up as a lair. And that was by Neverwinter, I think Mount Hotanau.
Oh, that
Yeah,
place, yeah.
great name. But like I took that location as the setting I was using, and then I kind of just did something there.
Sure.
It doesn't have to fit in with the setting. It doesn't have to fit in with established lore. It's your world in your game.
Yeah.
But you're using locations and places and things that are recognizable so that you have a basis.
Okay.
Which means you don't have to suddenly go, I need a town. What's in the town? What's the town look like? And you can go, it's this town. It looks like this town. It sounds like this town. It's just got different inhabitants this time.
Yeah. I almost feel like what you might need, and I'm sure they've made some of these, but I'd be interested if anyone out there can cite a resource for me of just like some just like a book that has some detailed elements that you could use for frameworks.
Definitely, they exist.
Yeah, so that, you know, say that people are just really familiar with the D&D and you don't want a town or a setting or something that's D&D, because people are going to go, wait, isn't this the thing in the place or whatever? But, like, individual towns, items, quest lines, stuff like that, framework that you can then work with, that's not actually specific to a setting, to a system, something like that, so that you can use those elements, use the narratives that have been created there and the detail, and then you can just drag and drop. Like drag and drop, but for tabletop. Drag and drop for tabletop. Perfect.
I like that. We're gonna trademark that. Drag and drop tabletop.
Drag and drop for tabletop. There's the episode title.
DDTTRPG.
DDTTRPG. Perfect. Down to roleplay. Anyway, thanks. And hopefully if anyone has any other suggestions, one, for any resources that I might be looking for, but if you are interested in either doing a low prep or a high prep, tell me which one you would like to do, or which one you prefer to do. I think you determined that low prep works best for you. No interest in going high prep? My route? Have I turned turned you off?
I do not have the ability to process enough stress for that.
Yeah, I think the thing is, though, for me, I felt stressed by not having something ready.
Yeah, no.
So, that was my inexperience showing. So basically, I think what we're getting to is, essentially, if you're new, you naturally try to high prep, and by the time you're an old hat, you start to do lower prep.
Yeah. You know how you always joke that I like to kill my players, and that one time you played with me, you started in a crypt?
Yep.
Almost dead already? Yeah, those were just riffing points, and I don't really kill all my players, but I don't prep, so if they do things that get them murdered, that's their own fucking fault.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. Apparently, as you get better at GMing, or you get a little longer in the tooth for it, you prep less.
Sometimes, or you prep more and just write modules.
Yep. If you, it's the two very different directions, two paths diverge in the forest. One leads you to make the actual modules, and one leads you to just not stress out so much about it.
Yeah,
so there's that.
Sure.